Hey, welcome to Deschutes County Board of Commissioners meeting. This is 9 a.m. Wednesday, December 20th, 2023. First item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is citizen input. Is there anyone in the room on any topic not on the agenda, or anyone remotely with a raised hand feature? Okay, a little quiet this morning. So at this time, a little bit of recognition. We want to take a moment and thank our County Administrator, Nick Lelak, for 15 years of service for Deschutes County. So this is your letter of appreciation from the Board of Commissioners and the citizens of Deschutes County. But yeah, I know you joined us from the city of Redmond and you've been around the country in planning, and then you've joined us as their county administrator. Thank you so much for your service.
Well, thank you. This is certainly a surprise. It's been just an extraordinary journey, and I have the pleasure every month of sharing with our new employees and new employee orientation of what an extraordinary place Deschutes County is to work for, to work with, within the organization, within the community, and just the opportunities that we're all afforded. I started as planning director and then served as community development director and now as county administrator. So I'm very, very fortunate, and I love to share that story with our team, and they're the ones that make it, it's our culture that makes it such an extraordinary place to work. So thank you very much.
15 years. Thank you very much. Let's get a quick photo. Oh, he's ready for a photo. There we go. Oh, yeah, we can get out the comments afterwards. All right. Roll here. The holidays. Thank you very much. So the holidays.
All right, yes.
Ready, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, it's great.
So you must have joined us in December. So that's the date of the letter here. So any other comments? Okay, thank you. So at this time, consent agenda, and I was just having a discussion with Mr. Bozell over here about quite a consent agenda today, and some of these are groups of letters, so the appointments and reappointments, and thank you for various committees and special districts. So a little bit of a package today.
So move approval of the consent.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. At this time, public hearing for a plan amendment and zone change at 64430 Hunnell Road. There we go.
Good morning, Commissioner. Your planning manager, Will Gross here. Jacob Ripper is our planner on this one, and he is a bit under the weather and is going to be conducting this hearing remotely. So hopefully he's succeeded on getting into Zoom there.
So Jacob Ripper will be joining us. So yeah, thank you, Jacob, for joining us remotely when we say under the weather, and he's still working. So let's confirm he's available. Okay. Okay, Jacob,
Hello.
thanks for joining us.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
So I'll
great.
get going with our, there we go. Oh, look at, he's under the weather with a tie and a nice shirt.
Still
This
still
is the
have to
time
look
of
good,
consent
you
for
know.
hearing regarding file number 247-23210 PA 247-23211ZC. This is a hearing on the proposed plan amendment and zone change. Staff will outline the hearing procedures that will be followed.
Thank you, Chairman DeBone. For the record, my name is Jacob Ripper, and I'm a principal planner with the Deschutes County Planning Division. Today, the Board of County Commissioners will take testimony and receive written evidence concerning a proposed plan amendment and zone change. Yeah, as mentioned, I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so sorry if there's some sniffles or my voice is a little bit rough, but we'll make it through this. Today's hearing will proceed as follows. First, staff will explain the hearing format and how to testify at today's hearing, followed by a brief presentation on the application. Then the testimony portion of the hearing will begin. The applicant will present first. Then if there are any agencies or government bodies present, following that, persons in support will testify, and then finally those in opposition will testify last. Afterwards, the applicant will then be afforded an opportunity to present rebuttal testimony. And finally, staff can make closing comments if requested. This is a hybrid public hearing with both in-person and remote participation. Before starting your testimony, please provide your first and last name, as well as your mailing address. For our in-person participants, if you want to testify, please fill out a blue sign-up sheet and submit it to the board's administrative assistant, Brenda, to the left of the dais. Chairman DeBonne will call up in-person participants for their testimony. After your name is called, please come up to one of the tables at the front of the room before beginning your testimony. For our remote participants, if you want to testify, you must be logged into Zoom or have called in using the Zoom dial-in option. When Chairman DeBonne asks if anyone would like to testify, you will need to use the raise hand feature to notify the board. To do this, you need to press the raise hand button on your computer or smart device, or if you called in, dial *9. When it is your turn to provide testimony, you will be promoted from an attendee to a panelist. You may experience a brief pause as your status changes. Once you have joined as a panelist, you'll be able to turn on your camera if you would like to. In addition to oral testimony, if anyone has written testimony to submit, please either hand it to the administrative assistant, Brenda, or you can email it directly to me. My email address is on the screen and it's jacob.ripper@deschutes.org. The chair and staff are responsible for conducting an orderly hearing. Any testimony or behavior which is inappropriate will be addressed and may result in that member of the public being removed from the hearing. And with that, I'll hand it back to Chairman DeBonne.
But this time, does any commissioner have anything to disclose? And if so, please state the same nature of same and whether you can proceed.
I have nothing to disclose and I believe I can proceed.
I have no conflicts of interest, but I do have a lot of interests in this general area along Hunnell Road, and I would like to sit this one out.
Oh, okay.
The two things that I'll mention are, number one, the county property immediately adjacent to this property. I have a keen interest in seeing this developed as a park, potentially with campgrounds. And there may be zoning questions associated with proceeding with that project, and it'd be hard to not mix those together in some way in looking at this application. I also have back in the day when we were moving forward with the Hunnell Road improvement projects, many people said to me, well, the county just wants to widen and straighten and pave the road so they can put more development in there. And, I said to people at that time that was not the interest of the county, but this is a development proposal. So it'd be very hard to view this application out of the context of those discussions. So I guess I'm not sure. I haven't recused myself or sat out a hearing like this before. Should I leave or do I sit and listen? Or
in the past, I believe we've only had it happen once that I can recall, maybe twice. I believe the board person left the dais and just avoided being up here during either the public hearing, the subsequent deliberations, the vote, all that.
So would you recommend I go upstairs and watch from my desk?
Whatever you prefer, yeah, you could go. I think back then we didn't necessarily have that option. So I think, as I recall, as Commissioner Unger, I know in one instance just sat in audience, but
Okay.
And
Yes, you
then
could be in
mine
the room, I
over
would
Three Creeks.
Okay, and I don't
Yes.
recall, did you go back upstairs?
I wasn't in the room.
Yeah, okay, so it's really up to your choice, Commissioner. If you're more than welcome in the room.
I'll go sit in the back.
So I would confirm no conflict of interest, history of the Transportation System Plan project, which is Hunnell Road Development, but no direct conflict personally. So that would be my statement. Does any party wish to challenge any commissioner, member of the hearing body, based on ex parte contacts, biases, or conflicts? So this opportunity to challenge. Is there anybody remote or online? Okay, so yeah, Ryan. You're joining us, Ryan, in a public hearing and land use rezone discussion.
Hello, I just wanted to let everyone know my hand was raised during the citizen input period to comment on something not on the agenda. I would just ask the board to revisit the citizen input at some point during this meeting to allow people to speak. There's several folks that would like to talk about something that's not on the agenda, and that was blown through.
Okay, understood. Yeah, so we started right at the top of the hour, and yeah, we just missed that. So I will support that procedurally. Dave, do you have any guidance on that? I mean, just
No, that's fine. If the board's inclined to do that, you could do it now. You could wait till the end of the meeting, do it really whenever you choose to.
well, yeah, no, I not at the end of the meeting. Any thoughts, Commissioner Dare?
I think it's appropriate that we hear from them now. Because, yes, if they're online and it didn't happen.
Okay, so procedurally, so welcome Commissioner Chang back. Let's confirm we're gonna open up a public hearing, put it on standby for a few moments. So following through with this procedure that we're partially through, this is a challenge to commissioners or for ex parte contacts, biases, or conflicts on the land use matter in front of us. Is there anybody with there may be multiple people with raised hand feature now. Okay, yeah, so none at this time. So no challenges have been presented. So prior to opening of the hearing, does anyone have any procedural objections to this public hearing? So seeing none, I'm going to stand by and opening this public hearing. That kind of works well in our script. And so that'll be following public comment period and items not on the agenda. So thank you for your flexibility today. At this point in time, we'll have Mr. Rudnick and anyone else remotely attending for comments. Is he still available in the Zoom call?
Thank you, commissioners, for the
Thank
opportunity
you.
to speak and for the time you've taken to speak with me and email individually regarding the triplex acquisition at 640 Southeast Wilson, which is proposed to house up to 15 felons and sex offenders. I acknowledge the urgent need for transitional housing solutions. I've even housed a felon myself in my triplex, which is next door to this one. Helped him get on his feet, and I'm glad I did. But as a concerned resident and property owner nearby, I feel a protective duty to speak up regarding the safety risks this decision poses to our community, particularly the impact on children. All three of my tenants, which live in the triplex adjacent to this one, have children. Two of those families are Hispanic, and there are families that live in the existing triplex that are being displaced to house felons and sex offenders. It just feels like a serious injustice to the neighborhood that's there. In just 6 days, over 500 petition signatures have been gathered in opposition to this. Not the idea of providing a solution, but in opposition to this as the location, given the risks that it poses to children. Page 24 of the grant agreement states that the property should be more than 1,000 feet away from schools, daycare facilities, or parks, but this site is barely 600 feet away from Kiwanis Park. It also mentions that it shouldn't be near or adjacent to a place where children congregate, but I can assure you that children congregate right across the fence on my tenant's deck, and they play together there, and they'd be in direct sight of the felons and sex offenders from the second story. Serious concern. And the public outreach process was obviously very rushed, lacks transparency. The adjacent property owners were not notified, and several of even the neighboring tenants were not notified. Only one of my 3 tenants was notified, and they did receive the information in Spanish, which would have helped them understand and discuss it. But we keep hearing from the county that it's no big deal. The recidivism rates are near zero, which kind of sends the message to us that we just need to deal with it and we're uninformed. That's not sitting very well with many of us. But if the county is truly not concerned about this and its risks, it should stand behind this and officially accept liability for any damages, crimes, or injuries that may result from establishment of the shelter here. Obviously, the grant agreement indemnifies the county and puts all the liability on Free on the outside. But it's really hard to trust the claims that this will be no big deal if the county's not willing to back that up and support the community. So we'd urge you to delay this decision until the community can fully be heard, even though the city shelter code changes essentially silence the voice of the public by making it a permitted use and do not require a hearing. It doesn't mean the public won't be heard. And the public is doing everything they can to make their voice heard, as you've seen in several articles in the petition and our speaking here today. So we urge you to hear your constituents and make adjustments in response to their concerns, and consider how you can consider other options that don't pose quite the same risk to neighborhoods and children. But if this does have to move forward, we expect a lot of support for the community and mitigating measures that can reduce this and reduce the risk of something bad happening. And the county, would expect the county to accept responsibility for what happens and not indemnify themselves from the negative outcomes that could result from this. So I implore you to prioritize the safety and well-being of our children in the community. This is a pressing need to consider this decision, considering the potential risks to our neighborhood's youngest members. Thank you for hearing me out, and please take this seriously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
I'd like to say one thing to Ryan and anyone else who's watching on this issue. It's very important for people to understand that the county is not the entity that is deciding who is released on parole and who is not. That lies with the courts. And I want to dig in a little bit to the specific types of crimes that people are expressing concern about. There's a lot of emphasis on concerns about child abuse and child sexual abuse. And this is something I know a significant amount about, having had pretty close contact with the Kids Center over the years. And something that's really important for everyone to understand about this is that almost all cases of child abuse and child sexual abuse are committed by people who are close family relations to the child who is abused, or close family relations, family, friends, relatives, people who work with those kids on a weekly basis. Child abuse and child sexual abuse are not crimes committed by strangers. So the danger is not so much about physical proximity or distance. The danger is associated with your relationships to potential offenders So that is part of understanding that crimogenic background is part of what weighs in with my evaluation of this situation and my understanding of the risks associated with this facility. And so I just want to share that. And again, say that the county, we are not the ones who decide who is released on parole. The courts decide who they think is a good candidate for rehabilitation, for reintegration into our community. What we are doing with the evaluation of this facility is trying to, in the most public safety way possible, we are trying to figure out how to provide the greatest likelihood of success of rehabilitation of people into our community without risk of recidivism. So that's without talking to the specifics of this site, I just wanted to provide that background. Thank you.
So this is citizen input. Is there anyone else with the raised hand feature remotely? Seeing none and with nobody else in the room, I want to, as I say, thank you, Ryan, for your testimony and the conversation. And yeah, we'll go from there. Oh, we do have someone else. So Ryan, let's communicate offline now. This was the public testimony portion of this. And we're going to proceed with a public hearing on a land use matter at this time. So with that, resuming our item number 10, plan amendment and zone change for 64430 Hunnell Road. So we've gone through our procedure for conflicts of interest, challenges, or objections to procedure. So at this time, the hearing is now open. Staff will proceed with a brief staff report.
Thank you. I will share my screen again. Yeah, so I just have a brief staff report, a little bit about the location of the property. It's a 1.5 miles north of the city of Bend's urban growth boundary. It's approximately 40 acres in size. It does front on Hunnell Road to its western boundary. And then it's approximately equidistant between Highway 20 to the west and Highway 97 to the east. So zooming out a little bit and looking at the surrounding zoning in the area to the north, west, and south, and the yellow color there, that's the multiple use agricultural or MUA 10 zone. And then the orange and brownish zones to the east are exclusive farm use, EFU, and then that kind of white zone is open space and conservation area. The property directly east of the subject property is approximately 80 acres in size and is owned by the county. Several of these other properties to the east in the EFU and OS&C zones are either owned by Deschutes County or the city of Bend. So this request is for a comprehensive plan amendment to go from an agricultural designation to rural residential exception area, with a corresponding zone change from exclusive farm use to multiple use agricultural. In this case, the applicant is not requesting a Goal 3 exception because they are arguing that the property does not constitute agricultural land. So what exactly is agricultural land? It's defined by the Oregon administrative rules as well as the Deschutes County Code. One of the main factors to consider in determining if property is agricultural land is if it's predominantly comprised of class 1 through 6 soils. And in this case, the applicant submitted a soil survey conducted by a qualified soil scientist that concluded the property contains approximately 65% class 7 and 8 soils. There are some other factors in the administrative rule to consider about classifying agricultural land, such as, in this case, there's no history of prior farm uses, there's no existing irrigation, and then capability to be used in conjunction with other commercial farm activities in the area. The hearings officer determined that all of those factors were not met for defining this property as agricultural land and therefore was appropriate to be rezoned to a non-resource zoning classification. A little bit about the process here. So a hearings officer hearing was held in November and a recommendation issued also in November. This is the second of 2 required hearings. So This is the hearing in front of the Board of County Commissioners. Following this hearing, there will be deliberations. And then depending on the outcome of those deliberations, staff will draft a decision for the board and an ordinance. Next steps at the conclusion of today's hearing, the board will need to choose one of the following: continue the hearing to a date and time certain, close the oral portion of the hearing and leave the written record open to a date and time certain, close the hearing and schedule deliberations for a date and time to be determined, or close the hearing and commence deliberations. With that, that's the end of my brief staff report. I am available for any questions if the board has questions for staff.
Any questions?
Not at this time.
Okay, looks like no questions at this time. So this is a public hearing on the matter, so we'll go with the applicant presentation, agency and government bodies if present, people in support and people in opposition. So thank you very much for joining us.
Can I be heard?
Yep, please proceed. Yes.
My name is Liz Dixon. I am an attorney with the law firm of Dixon Hatfield here in Bend. I represent Mike and Kathy Groves and the Groves Family Trust in the application for a comprehensive plan amendment, rezone, and later a tentative plan. The application in front of you affects 64430 Hunnell Road. It is a 40-acre square parcel immediately east of Hunnell Road. It is also known as tax lot 800. Deschutes County has 80 acres immediately east of that, and the application before you would indirectly impact that property in that we are later asking for a cul-de-sac to go down between the 4 10-acre lots that we're creating and ultimately provide an easement through to the county land, which is currently landlocked. There is also Highway 97 at 0.85 miles to the southeast of the subject property.
Question.
Yes,
Is that north of the property, south of the property, or through the middle of the property?
the application that,
Yeah.
the application that's been filed, that is not before you, but I put it all together so you can see what we're doing. The 40-acre parcel is a square. We're dividing it into 4 10s that are also squares. The cul-de-sac would go down the middle and make a bulb where the 4 meet with an easement to the county land. The application property is also 1.5 miles from the UGB, which is currently to the south. There is exception land on 3 sides of it, which means if and when Bend decides to expand their UGB again, it is more likely than not that they will go into exception lands, which would include the lands in this area. The plan amendment zone change before you would ask to change the comprehensive plan amendment designation from agricultural to rural residential exception area, which is what's commonly provided in areas where you decided it's no longer appropriately resourced land or that never should have been. The zone change we're asking for is a change from exclusive farm use, EFU, to multi-use agricultural 10-acre minimum, commonly referenced in planning parlance as MUA 10. The basis for our request is that this is not appropriately agricultural land. As best we can determine, when this property was originally taken from federal lands and put into private lands, it was part of a much larger tract, some of which may have had farming capabilities. However, the Oregon Revised Statute definition, the Oregon Administrative Rule definition, the statewide planning goal 3 definition, the Deschutes County Code definition, all have very specific definitions for what agricultural land properly is, and this isn't it. These are the things they look for. First of all, they look at whether the property is farmed. It is not. Secondly, they look at whether the property has been farmed. It hasn't. Then they look at whether the property could be farmed, which is where we get into the soils analysis. And the soils analyst said that this is 65.4% bad soil, class 7, class 8. So then the question becomes, well, if you irrigated it, could that change it? And the soils analyst said, in this case, no. The sand is too rocky, too sandy, the water will just run right through. So what we have here is land that has never been farmed, is not farmed, and cannot be farmed. There is a recent analysis that came out of the Land Use Board of Appeals and what we commonly reference as the 710 acres case, but I think its official title is Eden Properties. Why is that case important here? It's important here because in the Land Use Board of Appeals review of your decision, they made a determination that the definition of agricultural land perhaps should be broadened. Well, no, they said it should be broadened. And they said that you should look at things like, could you put a barn on it? Could you store hay on it? Could you do other things to it that would help farmers without being farming in and of itself? That decision made by LUBA has been challenged to the Court of Appeals, and by my research as of yesterday, that decision has not been rendered. I will say that the decision that is pending before the Court of Appeals, if they found with LUBA, would run directly counter to the Weatherall case, which has been good law in Oregon since, I think, 2007 or 2008, depending on which case you look at. And so it would be a reversal of all that time when we have used a definition of agricultural land that was a little narrower than what LUBA is proposing now. As it stands right now, the current law is Weatherall rules, because that's the Supreme Court case. We have no decision from the Court of Appeals. So we call what came out of LUBA informational or guidance, if you choose to accept it. In my analysis before the hearings officer, I did address those issues because I thought it was important to be careful and use belt and suspenders. So if you take a look at whether this property could be of aid to another farming property, it's important to note that there is no commercial farming anywhere near this property, not to the north, not to the west, not to the south, and not on the county property to the east. So even if you built a barn there isn't a farm nearby that it would help. The other kinds of issues that they asked us to look at are also not applicable here. Again, because this area is not farmable. So you're not going to be helping other farms by getting involved in this process. The other issue that is important to certain factions is whether a statewide planning goal exception to goal 3 is appropriate here. And that is also the beneficiary of a long line of discussion, very legal in nature. And basically what it says is you have to take an exception to statewide planning goal 3 if you're doing something to agricultural land that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do under statewide planning goal 3. Since this isn't agricultural land, statewide planning goal 3 doesn't apply, so no exception is necessary. And that's the essence of the nasty legal arguments in this case. In Jacob's staff report, he did an excellent job of going through the 710 acres case and looking at the specific factors that were identified there. If you're interested in going into them in further depth, they're available to you. The hearings officer also went into them because I argued them with him, but I'm not inclined to put you through them here unless you expressly tell me you want me to, because they're pretty nasty. Bottom line is this. This is a 40-acre piece that probably never should have been farmed. But in November of 1979, when Deschutes County was pressured into zoning all their land something, basically the process was they looked at aerial photographs of the county, and if there were places in the county where there was housing or where there were 5-acre parcels or where there were signs of the fact that it was already beyond what we would consider a farming use, in those instances, they zoned that exception land. RR5, RR10, MUA10, RR2.5. There are lots of choices. The lands that weren't developed already or that didn't have extensive forest on them, which in this county is minimal, were zoned farm as the default zone. And it is generally suspected, not just by me, but by many others, that you could consider this a mistake, which is one of the factors. You could also look at it as new information because we now have a soils analysis for this property that we've never had before. And we now don't have to guess whether or not it's farmable. We have a soils analyst accepted by DLCD that says 65.4% of this land is not farmable. So it is reasonable, I think, to conclude that this probably was never farmable. Whether it was by mistake or by new information, I think we've satisfied the requirement for a plan amendment zone change under your code. I am available to answer any questions you have. But at this point, it's my view that the case that's before you is clear. We have provided substantial evidence in the record to show that this is appropriately changeable by plan amendment and zone change to RREA and MUA 10, and we ask that you approve the application.
So one of the one of the kind of thought processes I have is multiple use agriculture, MUA 10, refers to some agricultural activity. And as we know in the high desert, it's function of water. But any thoughts on, I mean, the lifestyle of MUA 10 opposed to RR 10, or has that come up at all?
I can tell you that the intent of MUA 10 falls directly into what we're asking to do in this parcel, which is you don't want to do anything that's going to impact somebody who wants to do farm. And with 10-acre minimums, that's fine. The difference between rural residential and MUA has to do more with whether anybody does any kind of agriculture at all, like hobby farming in the area. And there are a couple of neighbors who, because they're all 5 and 10-acre parcels, except for the county parcel. There are some parcels around which do some kind of farm-looking things, but it's certainly not for profit. Like they may have a cow or two or a goat or two, so that kind of thing. And that's generally seen more in MUA 10 than in RR 10 or in RR 5 or RR 2.5.
Any other questions?
So the cul-de-sac, the road is going to come off of Hunnell Road then?
Yes.
Okay, it comes off, it goes to the middle and it turns around and goes back out as a cul-de-sac.
The way we've described it in the application is, yes, there's a bulb at where the 4 parcels come together at the crosshatch. And then there is an easement that extends beyond the bulb that goes all the way to the Deschutes County property.
Okay, so it's an easement.
It allows for to and through when it's needed.
Thank you for your testimony. There'll be a rebuttal opportunity at the end if needed.
Thank you.
At this time, are there agencies or government bodies to testify on this matter? Seeing none, is there any persons in support to testify? We're looking for a raised hand feature online also, if there's anybody out there on this topic. Okay, we're possibly resetting the video display in our meeting room here. That's fine. And then also, is there anybody in opposition that is here to testify? Or anyone online? So are you able to see the participants from the Zoom call? Yeah, okay. So making sure we're there. So no testimony on this matter other than the applicant's representative. Are there any other statements from the applicant's representative in conclusion? Okay. So staff closing comments. Jacob, if you have anything, or if we can discuss. Oh, and then so we don't have video here, but we can see here.
I don't have any closing comments unless you had any questions for me.
Okay. Thank you very much. So yeah, as I say, I asked, the concept of MUA 10. So the value that I picked up there is farming for a profit is probably the big separation from EFU land to MUA 10, because there may be farm type activities, but farming for a profit is a different scenario. So just putting some words out there. So no other testimony at this time. Commissioner Dare, a choice would be to close the oral or written and oral record at this time, and then discussion about deliberations.
Okay. Interesting that no one was here to testify this morning. Yes, definitely we should close the oral portion as long as we have acknowledged there's no one online. Okay. And then,
So then, quick question. So Jacob, the public hearing process in front of the hearings officer was like this also, the limited participation?
Yes, yeah, the only person providing testimony was the applicant's attorney during that process. And we didn't receive any public comments in response to notice of public hearing or notice of application.
Okay. Well, so I'd be comfortable closing the record at this time. If you support that also.
I would support it.
Okay, so at this time, we're going to close the oral and written record on this matter, being the second hearing on this topic. It has been through a hearings officer process and now this process. So at this time, is there comfort in deliberations or setting a date for future deliberations?
How soon could we do future deliberations? Like the 1st of January? Or
I'm supportive.
or do you want to do it now?
Yeah.
Okay. Could this be the fastest?
Oh, I know. So as I
Record?
say, yeah, we've seen some.
Yes. I know. How long ago, Jacob, was this application put in?
I have to double check. I think it was submitted in maybe March or May and was put on hold for a little while, but then we ramped up in the autumn to get this processed.
And we're talking about 2023 then?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well. Yes. I'm fine deliberating
So
today.
so down the deliberation path, we do have the concept of the Hunnell Road improvements that, separate process, but it's co-located there. This has never been an intention or a vision or a discussion that had come up. So this is kind of back to that conflict or big picture, but it does fit into my conclusions as a sitting commissioner that MUA 10 at 10-acre minimums would be a acceptable use on properties, especially at this location in these conditions with state land use and the soil conditions as they are. It does, fit back to the concept of no irrigation water history and no history of farming for a profit. So I'm supportive.
I am likewise. It definitely seems the fact that they've never done farming there. And yet, I would like to acknowledge that 10 acres is really, that's a decent amount of property to, if you're not going to, you're going to go from the 40 to go to 10, that would make sense.
And then, yeah, that's the system we have. So then, at this time, deliberations, 2 commissioners in support with 1 abstaining from the process. Is there a motion? Dave, can you help me about? Yeah, or is it? Yeah.
Yeah, Commissioner, the motion, I don't recall, did we have a draft ordinance or not, but the motion would be to
We can bring
approve
that back.
plan amendment and zone change.
Yeah.
The identified numbers there.
So we could acknowledge it in a vote and then bring it back with a.
Correct. I would assume that could be, I don't know when the next meeting is, but
So yeah, okay, just so Commissioner Dare.
January 3rd, bring it back in January 3rd.
that's
So move approval of, the hearing officer decision for file number 247-23-000210, PA, comma, 247-23-000211 dash ZC.
technically it would be this is a de novo matter, so it's a board approval of the zone change and the plan amendment with those numbers. The hearings officer is just a recommendation.
Okay.
So would you clarify board approval? is the
Board
motion?
approval as my motion, yes.
Okay, and I will second that. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes. Thank you very much for that process today, and there we go. So, Commissioner Chang, please join us. So item number 11, this is the next item on the agenda, resolution adding FTE and increasing revenue appropriations in the Intellectual and Development Disability Program within Health Services. Good morning, Paul.
Morning, Commissioners. Joining me online is Cheryl Smallman. I'll introduce myself. I'm Paul Partridge. I'm the Program Manager of the Deschutes County Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Program. Cheryl?
So Cheryl, thanks for joining us. If you're out there. Has she been welcomed into the Zoom? Okay. Who has the slides? Do you have the slides? And you,
Can I
so you,
advance them?
yeah, I think you can advance them with the keyboard. So
Okay,
yeah.
Great, thank you.
I do have some questions before you start. You said that this includes estimates for Crook and Jefferson County allocations. Have those numbers been finalized yet?
A portion of them are still pending. We, by agreement with Crook and Jefferson, we conduct their abuse investigations. By agreement with Jefferson only, we also do their licensing and certification of foster homes. That's the dollar amount that we're trying to get finalized.
Okay.
Any other questions before I begin?
No.
So we're going to look over our shoulders here today. We usually have it in front of us, but it's behind us today.
Members of the board, thank you for the time, the ability to come and update you on our program and to kind of reflect on some changes that have been made and some proposals in terms of additional full-time equivalency that we want to add position authority for. This opening slide is just a portrayal of some of the, just a reminder of the individuals that we're serving in our program. And for the public, I'll just say that, just to repeat what's in the staff report, is that the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Program provides support to people with IDD, intellectual developmental disabilities, to enable them to live as independently as possible and in the least restrictive environment. Services are aimed at greater access to social interaction, community engagement, and employment opportunities. So this next slide, I did want to just underscore that this really represents the steady increase in the intellectual developmental disabilities population, the enrolled population in Deschutes County. I know you see the word growth on a lot of these slides. I wanted to just mention that while this does indicate growth, we're really not trying to grow a program. We're really trying to stay at pace of the needs of the citizens in Deschutes County who experience intellectual developmental disability and the families that are supporting them.
So Paul, you're saying as of second quarter, it was 877.
Yes.
That would be like at the end of this month though, would it not?
Yeah, I think if I were to look at a real-time number, we're probably over 880 as far as of today.
Okay, so how many people per person that is enrolled in the program? I'm just wondering what is the ratio there?
I think we'll see that in a later slide, Commissioner, if I may.
Okay, I didn't see it when I went through it.
Okay,
So
yeah,
I mean, I think this is really important.
Sure. To answer your question, the average caseload per service coordinator is currently at about 45 individuals. The average contacts per week are about 11 contacts per service coordinator. Yeah.
So they only see somebody then once a month?
On that's kind of about what it pencils out to. Yeah, of course that changes. There's, 20% of a person's caseload probably have weekly or more than weekly contact, while the other 80%, are fairly self-sufficient for a period of time. But yeah, on average, some people about once a month. This next slide kind of, again, getting to kind of where our program falls in relation to the general population is what we're trying to portray here. we represent roughly half of 1% of the county's general population are individuals with intellectual or developmental disability. And another thing just to draw your attention to in this slide, the increase, if you look at the kind of the second grouping of bullet points, the average annual increase, our population tends to be increasing at a higher rate than just the general population.
There's actually an error on this slide. It says quarter one, and it should be 24, not 23. If you want to come up with an increase of 268 from 19, it should be to 2024.
Okay.
Fiscal year.
Fiscal year.
Noted.
So yeah, difference between fiscal year and calendar years. Huh?
Yeah. So coming to additions again, not looking to grow a county program, but looking to keep in pace with the population growth that we have experienced. And I think the thing that I really wanted to underscore before I talk about the position authority that we're looking for is that we really want to be able to continue with the standard of excellence that we are known for. Deschutes County Intellectual Developmental Disabilities, at risk of, sounding like I'm just being overly congratulatory of my own program. We are pretty well known for our standard of excellence and the customer service that we're able to provide to our vulnerable population. And so that's what we're really looking to do by adding these additional 3 full-time equivalent positions in fiscal year 24, plus looking forward to 25 through the budget process to add an additional full-time service coordinator.
But Paul, I went to the Rascal Rodeo. That is such an amazing opportunity if anyone gets a chance to go to the circuit finals next year at our fairgrounds. But it was such a heartwarming exercise seeing people that love their kids. They could be adult kids, but they're there. And, those kids get to ride a horse. They get to do all kinds of opportunities that they probably don't get to do in their regular life. But I was just really curious why we have to add administrative support. I would think we would want more service coordinators so that we could have more hands-on. If you're saying, it's only 11 visits a week, and our population is growing, I would think we would really need more service coordinators than administrative supports. I mean, how many supports do you have in that program?
Sure, it's a valid observation, Commissioner. We have chosen again, to the way that we operate our program with a high degree of excellence. There are, as you might imagine, being a Medicaid program, there are a lot of administrative burdens that would normally fall to a service coordinator that we have worked very hard to separate to administrative support staff, so the service coordinator can be out in the community with individuals and families, building relationships to best understand the needs of the individuals on their caseload and leave the administrative burden to folks who know how to do that work well. So yeah, we do try to, we have a very robust team of administrative support staff. You'll notice when I get to the slide depicting our organizational chart, which is actually next, if you'd like me to advance.
Yeah, please do.
So I know this may be small if you're trying to look over your shoulder, but it just shows where the additions would be. Those I would call them sort of orangish brown boxes show the service coordinators that are on our team. There are currently 20 full-time service coordinators. Again, with an average caseload of 45 individuals per. And where we would look to add would be.
That slide isn't in our program.
Oh, I'm sorry, this was updated after the original submission.
Okay, yeah, it's not in here.
So when I heard about this coming, I said, let's take a few minutes to just learn about the program. So I had suggested just taking a few moments and hearing about.
Well,
the
no,
big
we
picture.
definitely, and that's way too far for me to read it. So, yeah, I would love to see this
Maybe
slide.
you can just send us a copy of this,
Sure,
this
yeah.
slide, the added slides after the.
Updated version as well.
Great.
So without belaboring the organizational chart, this does show where they would go. The two new service coordinators would be added to those orangish brown boxes. One of these administrative support is actually a backfill for a reclass position that we've added to do some plan of care work. It's kind of a more specialized administrative support. And then we would be looking, the other administrative specialist would be to support our leadership team. We've never had of all the support staff you see in the green box toward the right. We have never really had a support staff to support our leadership team.
Do you know how many foster kids are in our county right now, Paul, approximately?
How many foster kids? We
Right.
serve both kids and adults in foster. I don't have that in front of me, Commissioner. I'm sorry.
Okay, I was just wondering. I know our CASA program does a really excellent job for Central Oregon, but I just know there are kids out there that really do need help. So,
Absolutely. And we have kids both in, we have IDD certified children's foster homes. And then we also have some of our young folks in child welfare certified homes. So certainly get that for you if you'd like. I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl for the next slides, but maybe I'll pause for any questions on what I've presented so far. Thank you. Cheryl.
Great. Good morning, Commissioners. Cheryl Smallman, Business Officer with Health Services. I just want to make sure there was an earlier version, and I see that was connected to the current meeting agenda. So if the total for the increase does not equal 961,037 on the slide, you have a previous version that has been corrected here. This is an overview of the new state funding for each of the main service elements for IDD. We will, as you can see, atop first column is the fiscal year 24 budget. What we thought at that point in time, fully knowing during the budget process that ODDS does not let us, they do not finalize the amounts until after we adopt our budget. The actual state grant amount is in the next column. Then the difference between those two, or increase in this case, and then what is being proposed in which of the service elements in terms of new FTE. So overall, we have an increase of $961,037 in state grant amount. And then we are asking for 3 new positions, as Paul mentioned, for case management in fiscal year 24. And then as part of the fiscal year 25 budget process, we will be coming back with an additional FTE ask to begin in July. Okay, next slide. The service element most of interest is probably service element 48, or case management. That particular service element has a match component to it that we can opt in or out of. There are 2 types of match programs. There's the standard match, and then there's maximum match. Maximum match allows us to put forth an amount of local funds, and then we recoup any additional expense that we have incurred above the state grant amount. We have to meet several criteria in order to be eligible. So I mentioned the first one, which is the expenses have to be over the state grant amount funding. We have to meet a number of encounters to actually garner the value that we would get in terms of federal dollars back. And then we have to have enough local funds to participate. During the COVID emergency, they had froze what's this ratio of federal funds to county general funds or local funds, I would prefer to call it. And this year, well, as of March for fiscal year 23, and when we are out of the COVID emergency, they released that cap, which was lower. And so our new federal funds are 62.8% to 37.2 in terms of local funds. So if you think of that for every dollar, for every 37 cents we put in, we would get 63 federal dollars back. So our staffing model currently, in order to fully meet our expenditures, we would need to participate in maximum match for fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25. We have participated in maximum match for a number of years. I think there was one year where we did not in the last 10. So we typically do participate. And we do have enough in county general funds for fiscal year 24 to add these additional 3 FTE and participate in maximum match. And we anticipate having enough encounters, so we would meet all eligibility criteria. Looking forward, we estimate that we'll need approximately 178,000 to potentially 250,000 of additional local funds to meet maximum match next year. So that's fiscal year 25. We do not anticipate needing to ask for additional county general fund. We are exploring various opportunities to use additional local funds. So above what the current behavioral health county general fund allocation is for this year, we would not be asking for more. So questions?
So I'm trying to understand the commitment for the following fiscal year. I guess that's the only thing that I'm, hesitant to be excited about. It's exciting being able to add these FTE now, knowing that we're following the funding model and the matching requirements. But just next year's commitment. And are you? Can you say something about that?
Sure. So IDD in fiscal year 24, their county general fund allocation is about 870,000 off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. About half of that goes to the local match program. The other half goes to cover indirect expenses. So the estimate for next year, I anticipate we would need roughly 1,050,000 to make the IDD program whole. Mm-hmm. As our indirects continue, if they go up, we would need more in terms of local funding. And we are exploring a variety of avenues of what might be considered local funding. So one potential that Robert Tintle and I are discussing is the additional interest on our behavioral health reserves. Are those considered discretionary, and can we use that for this program to help offset the local funds? So we're continuing to explore, but I do anticipate we'll need additional funding to make the entire IDD program whole in this current model.
Okay. Yeah. So as I say, in the next few years, the lines of costs and the lines of income may be a challenge. Commissioner Chang, sorry.
Cheryl, kind of along the same lines. So if you just mentioned the interest off of behavioral health reserves as a potential funding source for this. If you are thinking you're not asking for general fund dollars to cover this increase, what are some of the other places? What are some of your backups essentially in terms of addressing this local funding need?
Outside of the interest on our reserves, If that does not qualify, option C that we would be exploring would be some donated funds that do not have particular restrictions on them. And I use donated rather loosely. So that might be something like the community surplus funds that are unbudgeted and are often a surprise to behavioral health if we are awarded as a community meeting certain metrics from the state. So that is a third option, though I believe those to be more restricted funds than first the county general funds, then the potential interest. And then the third option might be that. Or we look at and prioritize best paths forward.
Yeah, so as I say, we can all acknowledge that we may get some tightening here at some point. Just, the true cost of doing business going up more than the revenue coming in.
Yeah.
It's getting tighter. So this proposal is for the 3 FTE for this year, and then there's a commitment to ask for the next one, but it'd be a proposal in next year's budget.
Correct.
But it's another support specialist. That means we're getting 2. Half of the 4 people that you're asking for, 2 of them are support specialists.
Case managers, yes.
They're case managers. So who are the service coordinators?
Service coordinator is a case manager. The administrative support, you're correct.
Right.
Those are the 2 administrative support.
I know, it just seems like we're getting a lot of administrative. It sounds like the school systems where, we have a lot of administrators, but who are really doing the work with the people that need the work.
Again, I mean, I don't want to come across as argumentative, but the programmatic choice that we're making has been to, those administrative support specialists fall within the case management budget because they really are helping the case manager perform case management functions.
Get to the field.
So that we can really free up the case management professionals to be out in the community building trust, rapport, case management relationships with families and individuals. So I acknowledge it. It certainly appears that we are heavy on administrative staff, but they're performing parts of a case manager's job that they'd be stuck at their desks doing if we didn't have that level of support.
Could you maybe label these people as case management coordinators?
We could, or they kind of perform as a case aid. Some places use more of a case aid to help a case manager. So yeah, maybe it could be semantics.
I see it as the 67% of the federal overhead probably is the key to this whole thing. 63%. Okay, well, thank you.
With this really dramatic growth in the IDD population in the last 5 years, I mean, that's almost a 50% increase. The need for expanding case management capacity is clear, and this seems like an appropriate plan for increasing capacity and covering the costs to get us there. So thank you for presenting this.
So the last slide, then, we don't get that, the 10-year investment that was here in our packet.
We did remove that particular slide in the latest version, but we can pull it up.
Well, no, it just has 0, Cheryl, for 21 and 22. 10-year investment. Does that mean there were no county general funds invested those 2 years?
Correct. We had a carryover of funding, so we opted to utilize that carryover rather than invest new dollars from in those particular years, new county general fund dollars. So those 2 years, IDD did not get an additional allocation of county general fund.
Okay. So we just need a new packet then. Thanks.
Are we ready for a motion?
Yeah, sure. Good discussion.
I'll move approval of resolution number 2023-067, increasing appropriations and FTE within health services and the 2023-24 Deschutes County budget. Does this motion need to be more specific? I mean, do we need to list the number of positions or dollar
I think it's
amounts?
in the resolution.
Yeah, I think it relates to this, so you're clear.
Okay, in the resolution. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's my motion.
Okay. I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 12, resolution affecting changes to the FY 23-24 budget for the district attorney's office. Good morning and welcome.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Kathleen Mancoop, and I'm the management analyst with the District Attorney's Office, and I'm here to discuss Resolution 2023-069 to change an FTE specifically related to our illegal marijuana market enforcement project. The DA's office has been in partnership with the Sheriff's Office and Bend PD over the last couple of years to implement county efforts to stop illegal marijuana. We are currently, as of December 31st, we will be kind of between grants. And due to some grant funding that had rolled over that's the Sheriff's Office still has, they are willing to help support a 0.1 FTE for our department to help keep that coordination going until we can apply for our future funding. We suspect that grant will be posted, the RFP will be posted in the springtime.
This isn't a current position?
It is a current position. It's currently a 0.4 FTE. The 0.1 was specifically to manage this project, bringing that position up to a 0.5. So the 0.4 is a permanent position. The 0.1 kind of fluctuates depending on grant funding.
So RFP for what then? I guess I didn't think that far into it.
Oh, sorry.
So you said there's an RFP?
RFP specifically, we're waiting on the RFP specifically to request for a proposal from the state, so the Criminal Justice Commission, to apply for the funding.
I was
Sorry,
thinking that, yeah, so that's the other side of this.
that's the other
Got
side of
it.
it.
Sorry, I was. Okay. Pretty straightforward with this 10th of a position for the 6 months.
And we need all the interdiction capacity we can get. So it's great to see this project.
Yeah,
And it's nice to see you, Kathleen.
it's nice to see all of you as well.
Yes. I move approval of resolution number 2023-069, adjusting and increasing appropriations and extending a 0.1 limited duration FTE within the 23-24 Deschutes County budget.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Item number 13, pre-deliberation update, draft 2020 to 2040 transportation system plan. So, we saw a lot of engagement during a public hearing on this matter. Thank you for joining us. They usually are all on. It's on by default. You push the button if you're gonna. And then, for the record, Tara Carline, Senior Transportation Planner for the department. Today I'm here with Chris Doty, Road Director, and Cody Smith, Director. And I was here, we're providing an update on the transportation system plan and anticipation of deliberation on the draft plan. And this is a little bit of a change in direction from deliberation phases before, and that we're trying to, because of the size of the record and a lot of diversity of opinion, we're trying to narrow down which topics the commission would like to be reflected on future decision or deliberation matrix, owning it on sort of the desire of the board, what they want to see and what they that matrix, but also just really reflecting what the board sees in the public record on the topic item. So if there's no really, this follows the close of the record, December 6th at 4 p.m.
so this reflects the 300 and almost 330 public comments that we've received throughout the entire process. And really just for your review today, we're looking at page 104 and 105 of the packet material.
Okay. So just to kind of reiterate some things, we're looking here for highlighting of topics that would come back to the board for a decision or deliberation matrix at a future date, likely in January of 2024. On page 104 and 105 of your packet materials. So this is pages 2 and 3 of the memo here before you. There's 5 bullet points on page 104. These are sort of the 5 main general topic areas that have come up through this public record or through the entire public process, and including some of the discussion, some of what we heard even at the public hearing on the 29th itself. And then following that page on the following page 105 of your packet materials, there are an additional 5 bullet points that reflect the amendments put forward by the Planning Commission. And those are available for you as well to review and potentially include on the deliberation matrix request. I also just wanted to end all that by saying that we can look at any other topics that the commission finds interesting or would like me to include on the deliberation matrix. So you're not just limited to the bulleted items on pages 104 and 105. You can certainly dive into whatever you'd like, but without really any further coordination on our end, we're here for any questions you might have and to capture the topics you'd like to hear us come back with. And of course, available for Chris and Cody if they have any other preliminary statements or anything else.
Fewer words we say, the better. That we're here to hear from the board.
The fewer words. Oh, Chris. That couldn't be true.
Well,
So I do have a question about Tariq. When you say the public comments, the 330 of them, the last bullet point, priority status elimination for BIPAC bicycle route community connections. Elimination? Do you mean getting rid of it?
Yeah, so this was something that was mentioned by, I believe, Commissioner Chang during the process, and that was why this was reflected in that list as well, was that it was a thought that had been put out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be what's reflected on the matrix, but that was something we internally coordinated, thought would be a good thing to bring back up for discussion before the board.
Not getting rid of the routes, but rather how we've prioritized them.
Okay, so not making,
prioritizing them.
not, okay.
Oh, I see what
So in the draft plan, there was basically a 3-column table, and in the 3rd column, it listed the priority level associated with different paved pathway proposals. And since the county is not designing, funding, building, or maintaining these paved pathways, they're not our paved pathways. I didn't think that we needed to have a priority level associated with those projects. We could just leave them in there by reference.
Thank you.
So it was very engaging public testimony process on a very small subset of this whole big document. I want to thank Kittleson Associates for kind of putting this creating the document itself, the content in its formation. I'm supportive of all the proposed capacity improvements, safety improvements proposals, which is interesting how much testimony we had and none of that was really mentioned. When it comes down to the trails, I've deduced or kind of learned that, it's interesting. There's an effort to do multimodal paths, electric bicycles, three-wheeled vehicles or other kinds of transportation options. I remember years ago asking somebody, well, who votes for a transportation transit bond? Like if we're going to add buses, who pays for that? I'm talking about a bus district in Central Oregon has been a topic that's come in different forms over the years. And the conclusion is, I'll vote for it if it'll get somebody else off the road, because it's not me in my car, but it's those other people in the intersections that are the problem, which is just a funny concept. But I think the trails kind of fit into this same concept. And I've always been supportive of being able to do community connections on a beautiful day between communities. We don't have long periods of time, 5 months, but it's really kind of prime around here to be able to do that. So it is a big push and pull on multi-use paths. I'm just thoughts. So this is pre-deliberation. It's kind of getting words out for everybody to hear from what we think we've seen, getting this TSP landed as a document published for the next 10 years. Any other thoughts?
I'm not quite sure what we're trying to do today. I mean, I feel like the issues have been laid out pretty clearly. The public input has been gathered and summarized. I'm ready to deliberate, but so I'm kind of not quite clear what we're trying to do today pre-deliberation.
Sure. I think so. Traditionally, we've tried to provide the board with a decision matrix related to kind of high level topics, pertinent topics. So this is an effort because this is such a sprawling record, and you're right that it does, the topics sort of congealed around certain focus areas, but it's in an effort to present you with a decision matrix that accurately reflects your concerns as the board, and potentially, and Will might have something else.
As he shows up next to you.
Good morning again, commissioners. For the record, Will Groves, your planning manager. This pre-deliberation is something that we're trying on some of our larger records to see how it might help the engagement process. So looking at it for both the 2040 comprehensive plan as well as the transportation system plan. Given the huge volume of comments that have been received, staff is going to produce a deliberation matrix that identifies those issues that seem to have risen to a level of, needing. I mean, in the end, what you think we're trying to do here is we're trying to get to you a document that you can in the end sign. And the purpose of deliberations is for you to give us some feedback on, matters that we feel uncertain about how you might feel about it. If we could just produce that document and have it be perfect for all of you and say, yes, we wouldn't have even deliberations, just we'd produce it. So this pre-deliberations, because of the volume and diversity of comments that we've received, is an opportunity for you to let us know if there's anything that you think in particular you'd like to see in the deliberation matrix. That, this is an item, maybe one person made a comment, it didn't seem to get a lot of attention, but it was important to you and you wanted to make sure that it was fleshed out and supported and had the basis to, to make a good decision in the course of deliberations. I think ultimately there'll be, a significant portion of the comments that you probably won't speak to directly, and staff will attempt to produce a transportation system plan that, we believe is responsive to your interest and concerns based on the deliberation. But if there's something you think it isn't really raising to the level of attention that, it deserves, or there's things that you'd like to see supported or discussed, that's really what we're asking for here today. So just, as you review the materials, as you review the record, is there anything that you'd like to see us bring forward in deliberation that you think we might not be otherwise attending to?
Is this an opportunity to ask staff to dig into some of the questions, concerns that are raised? I mean, for example, on paved pathways, there were people who expressed concerns about impacts on resource management activities on resource zone lands. And I'm going to try to find out between now and when we deliberate, how serious those potential impacts are. Other people raised concerns about these paved pathways being additional inhibitors to wildlife migration, and that there's a lot to be dug into there. I mean, my understanding is that the primary impacts of trails and roads is when they go right through the middle of a piece of core habitat and split that in two, as opposed to, Highway 97 is already, Highway 97 already makes it so that there is no core habitat that sits in the middle of. So putting just another linear infrastructure feature in there is, I don't think, going to make a whole lot of difference to core habitat. But that's just my understanding, and it would be great, for example, to get some real wildlife biologists to weigh in on that, who are familiar with these issues. So this matrix isn't an opportunity to do that, to bring in more people to provide expert analysis on X, Y, or Z.
So
Is it?
I think the first part of your remark, which is, giving us some direction about what you'd like to see fleshed out in the matrix, which part, in the end, the deliberation matrix is an effort to simplify and bring forward choices that might reasonably be made as part of the record materials. To the second part of it, the record's closed at this time. So if you wanted to solicit additional testimony, that would be a process by which the board would ask for the record to be reopened to, try and obtain specific testimony on items. So we're limited to the pile of paper that we've got today in terms of the analysis we can produce outside of a request to reopen that.
Well, I look at it a little bit higher level. Well, this is the TSP in the county's TSP, knowing the city has the full authority for transportation improvements and the cost of the maintenance and improvements, and the state is going down some directions here, and that's where the multimodal comes up between the communities in the state right away also. So it was already discussed previously that we could choose to just include a general statement of support for multimodal connections, and dial the the content back, which is basically where you started saying, if we drop this whole prioritization, we name some things, but we don't give any specific direction to them.
No direction on where, on
who or the priority. Yeah.
Configurations or anything like that.
So then it boils down to, some specific things that the planning commission did come up with and say, let's put this here, put that there, and oppose one thing or another. So we can get down to that, or step back and just be a lot more generic too. And then, because you were just saying we should go deep into the topics too. So that,
I mean, if we're going to spend more time, if we're going to, like I said, I'm ready to deliberate today, but if we're going to spend more time, then I'm just wondering what further insights we could gain during that time. And if the record's closed, the record's closed. I mean, I don't want to reopen the record. So.
As I say, a lot of engagement, legislative process. So as I say, for clarity, I'd like to just back off because, the Sisters of Black Butte Ranch topic, federal land between the community. If you talk to some Black Butte Ranch residents, some are very excited, some aren't. This is my private, community or whatever. And then the city of Sisters is like, oh, it's going to be the greatest thing. Let's go do this. So I would like to, to step back from that. As I say, if there's a community effort, somebody wants to do something somewhere, I'm not opposed to it, but that's a big old process, mostly on federal land also. I'm very supportive of stepping back, making a general statement of support for multimodal, because then it also fits right into the transportation package for next year in the legislature, because this is ODOT that came to the table saying, we'd like to do this here and this there. And that's a whole transition from somebody buying a gallon of gas, going into a trust fund and maintaining or expanding the road system, which we've done for the last 100 years. I understand this is a huge transition when you think about, electric mobility devices, not on the traditional road system. Very different. So as I said, just like the legislature to figure out where they want to go with that and make generic statements in support of a bright future, whatever that looks like.
If I could just, just caution the board to be careful not to dive into deliberations. We're getting kind of close to that point.
Oh, well,
this wasn't noticed for deliberations. We're going to have a procedural error.
I'm not deliberating.
Well, that's fine. I'm just trying to get words out to get it moving.
Yeah, deliberation isn't always just a back and forth, bargaining type thing. It's all the preliminary to that, and there's some case law on that. I think to be safe, we maybe bring this back on a date when it's set for deliberations, and in the interim, certainly if a commissioner has a particular item that's of any particular interest that you want to make sure is addressed appropriately by staff, I think you could reach out through legal counsel and we could make sure that occurs.
Yes. if our job today is to identify what we want in a matrix, I would say the bulleted items under public testimony in this staff memo are appropriate things to address in a matrix, and the planning commission's recommendations as well. I mean, but beyond those, I don't.
Yes, I think you've done an excellent job of capturing. And I just heard on the news that next year they're going to finally fix Prineville. It's only been 7 years since that was put on the plan, right? That big transportation bill. So hopefully we'll get, we'll come back next year, and I appreciate your analysis of our community's feedback.
Well, so there's, support for basically putting them in a table and letting us, get in there. So yeah, I guess we're not gonna.
Be sure and print it on a really big paper.
Absolutely, yeah. That's my favorite.
So you know how
trademark move. The I think that was more or less what I think we're honing around. So I appreciate this is a kind of a new interim phase, but so we'll reflect sort of the 10 bullet points in a decision matrix. More or less, we were trying to see if there's anything extra you wanted, if there's something you don't feel like it needs to be in the matrix. So thanks for bearing with us during this new process, and we'll see you at we'll be in touch with a future date, but it'll likely be in January sometime.
it will likely be in January.
Yeah. Thank you very much, commissioners. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yes.
There you go. Got him to say something.
Thank you, Cody and Chris.
Okay, item number 14, consideration of a letter providing input on a comprehensive approach to Measure 110. Eric, okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Eric Kropp, Deputy County Administrator. Last week, District Attorney Steve Gunnels provided the board with an overview of a proposal to reform Measure 110. At the conclusion of that discussion, the board directed staff to draft a letter that generally supported the reform. So today, we just wanted to go over that letter. Also, I want to acknowledge that Commissioner Adair was not present, so the discussion was with two commissioners. Also, the draft letter, I shared that with DA Steve Gunnels, and he emailed me back. He was not able to attend this morning. I did invite him to the meeting. He had another meeting, but in his email, his comment on the draft letter was, quote, "These modifications look good to me. I think they add important caveats to the initial proposal that would strengthen treatment approaches included in that document if adopted." So just here to discuss the draft letter, and staff is prepared and happy to make any changes that the board would like.
Yeah, I don't have a copy, printed copy of it if you have. So I found his presentation very valuable, even just, getting to the content of, the charging options of Class A misdemeanor and intent to distribute concepts, and just having those other opportunities, hooks in the system to be able to hold on to, the fact that there may be some bad things going on and we're not just letting it go. So I found myself speaking to a few people on that recently. Any thoughts?
To add to that, I think it was a really good effort to approach our substance use disorder and addiction issues in our community in a comprehensive way. To not just say, oh, well, we're gonna create opportunities for different kinds of criminal sentencing, and that's going to fix everything, because it's really important to understand that criminal sentencing isn't what fixes things. It's getting people into treatment, driving them to treatment in various ways, and getting them successfully through treatment. And this proposal includes a whole bunch of specific ideas about how to increase our treatment capacity and to kind of again drive people to treatment, so that they can successfully get through recovery, not be public safety menaces to the community, and hopefully lead productive lives after that. So I thought it was a very good comprehensive package. And I also emphasize that that there weren't any dollar amounts included in that proposal. And if all of those expansions of treatment capacity are implemented, and the kind of support and supervision that's necessary to get people through treatment, it will cost hundreds of millions of dollars across the state. I mean, just looking at that package for Deschutes County alone, it would cost tens of millions of dollars here. A great vision and kind of a great vision and strategy, and without serious support, bipartisan support from the legislature, I'd be concerned that not all pieces of this package are going to move forward and get the resources that they need to make it a successful approach overall. So I thought the letter was well done. Thank you.
And just to bring everyone up to date, as of last Thursday, per Best Care and Rick Chalefin, my conversation with Rick was that we were now up to 23 overdose deaths in his treatment area. 23. He actually, if you didn't hear earlier, 3 people overdosed and died in 1 week. People that Best Care had been working with. So it's been an incredibly tragic year. I was interviewed yesterday and I did mention Ideal Options. We have Ideal Options in Bend and Redmond for treatment. If you know someone in your family that's really struggling, please get them, have them call up and make an appointment with the Ideal Options. They're open Monday through Thursdays, 10-hour days on those days. But it's just such a tragedy what's happening. And, I just feel like we're taking more time to change the course of what's happening in Oregon, and we need, thank goodness we have our DA who's really at the forefront of this. He's worked in drugs for a long time, and I'm happy to see that he has some strong options that should be incorporated into what the legislature is going to be doing this in this short session.
So in the letter, the 3 topics are fully fund probation departments, prioritize adequate and sustainable funding for specialty courts, and establish authority to utilize welfare holds up to 72 hours. So those are 3 areas that we definitely, crisscross all of the different agencies and support that Deschutes County provides. So I'm supportive of this letter as going to the governor and our Central Oregon State Legislative Delegation.
It is interesting, though, that I actually have met people that went to prison and that did save their life. When you hear their story and they said, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, but I actually went to prison and it saved my life. So I know they're always, it seems such a harsh, in your face, what the choices you're making. But I have met people, and I know sometimes it takes people up to 10 times, 20 times, whatever. But every time you have an overdose and you survive, you've had a concussion, and it's got to, things have got to change.
Well, that was one of the beautiful things about this letter or about this proposal is that, it creates these, it does rely on criminal sentencing to drive people to treatment, but then it also makes sure that, in jail, outside of jail, that through, parole, parole and probation, through treatment capacity in the community, that you didn't just put somebody in jail, you put them on a path to receive the treatment that they need or engage in the treatment they need to recover. And it's great to see people thinking about how the criminal justice system and the behavioral health system work together.
Is there a motion to support this letter as proposed?
I'll move approval of letter providing input on the proposed comprehensive approach to Measure 110 as developed by Public Safety Partners.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is consider draft letter regarding ODF wildfire funding proposal. So thank you very much, Commissioner Chang, for going through the content of that. Basically, it turned into questions.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
The overarching concern is just, we need adequate suppression capacity, fire suppression capacity at ODF. But we don't want Deschutes County residents to be paying a whole lot for a capacity that is primarily going to benefit other parts of the state.
Well, and probably east and west is just, the west side density opposed to the east side, fuel reduction treatment needs very different.
Yeah, and this won't provide any support
Well,
for fuels reduction work. This is suppression
yeah, I
capacity.
know.
And so it's, the desire to get an understanding of how much ODF protected acres there are county by county. I think that could tell us a whole lot about who's going to benefit from this proposal and who's going to have to pay for it.
Well, I think I'm already paying. Just got my USAA bill and it went up 30%, and talked to someone else. So, and their USAA and their bill went up 30% too. So, yeah, the insurance companies are definitely looking at us, and maybe that's the USA standard for residents that live in Central Oregon.
Yeah, insurance is a whole nother question, which, I mean, we could add to this letter, because this is just about how much property owners are going to pay to the state for that ODF wildfire suppression capacity. But what the implications of that capacity are for our insurance premiums, that'd be something to ask about as well. I don't know how that translates.
Good morning. Still, Eric Crop, Deputy County Administrator. Joining me is Kevin Moriarty, our County Forester. For board consideration is a draft letter back to AOC based on our giving input on a proposal to change the funding for ODF as been discussed by the commissioners. There's also an expanded draft letter submitted by Commissioner Chang that goes into more detail, and we're just here to get board direction and answer questions.
But I'm supportive of responding and being engaged. We know Deschutes County has a long history of Project Wildfire, defensible space once again. And ODF and W does, cooperate and respond with resources when there's fire events in Central Oregon and Deschutes County. So I'm supportive of getting these questions back and being engaged.
I wrote the question, so I'm supportive.
Well,
I mean, I guess
yeah.
I would ask if we wanted to try to add one more about kind of what this means in terms of insurance, coverage and premiums for these landowners.
A question along the lines of, affecting rates across, the whole state, because that is.
And one of the questions, I mean, ODF, the history of ODF fire protection is about protecting trees. It's not about protecting homes. So, discussions of homeowner insurance premium changes and coverage changes may be completely irrelevant to this this proposed funding kind of formula.
Well, I mean, but it could be acknowledged that that's a separate topic, even if we even bring up the question. Would you do you think this is appropriate to ask that kind of question, Commissioner Dare? You're wanting to know?
No, I just think it's
acknowledging
the
your
end. I just think it's the result of what has been going on, that
The bigger
fact that
picture.
everyone's insurance, and you can say you have to insure in Oregon, but you know what? They can say, no, we're not. So Who's got the power?
Okay, yeah, so let's not add that as another topic. Supportive, as to say, this is a starting point for the conversation going back and forth.
And is our understanding that this funding formula is going to be adopted during the short legislative session? I mean, is that their goal or their intent here?
I don't know. It's a subcommittee of AOC. They asked for commissioner input, but I haven't heard either way. Have you heard anything, Kevin?
No, this is the first I've heard of it.
I mean, I know Commissioner Perkins from Hood River County. I mean, he was participating in this big work group with Senator Steiner. It wasn't an AOC process. It's a state level process with, clearly a legislator at the head of it. So I just assume that their intent was to kind of operationalize this in law, and maybe sooner than later. Who knows? Maybe they're aiming for the long session in 2025. But
when I submit the letter, I'm happy to ask AOC that question.
great, thank you. Yeah, because if they're going to try and act on this in February 2024.
No, it says right in the letter, this work group will continue into the 25 session.
Okay. That's great.
Okay, so yeah. So yeah, motion for that support of the letter that Commissioner Chang's updates.
Move board support of letter to AOC providing input on the ODF, Oregon Department of Forestry wildfire funding proposal.
Second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Okay, thank you very much. And Merry Christmas. So let's take a little break, just standing up break for 5 minutes here, and then we'll get back and get focused on the finances.
Thank you very much.
Okay, welcome back. That was our quick little break here. Item number 16, Treasury Report for November 2023. So November.
Morning, Commissioners. For the record, Bill Kuhn, Deschutes County Treasurer. I'll take just a couple minutes to provide a high-level overview of recent economic conditions. We talked just briefly last month. In mid-November, Congress again barely avoided a governmental shutdown due to an 11th hour settlement to extend funding. And they did this through a continuing resolution, agreeing to extend funding for essential government purposes, defense, human services, et cetera, through mid-January, and other government programs through mid-February. That will be, again, on the horizon here very shortly, as you can imagine. This legislation was approved without stringent budget cuts demanded by many Republicans, which sets us up for what appears to be an acrimonious process to establish full year funding in early 2024. So again, just kind of keeping that on our radar. It will likely, after we get through the holidays, it'll be kind of front and center again.
Question for you real quick, and I hadn't thought about this in a while. So a nominal successful federal funding process is October to October 1 year, or is it multiple years, I guess, is my question.
We've continued to kick the can down the road without addressing full year funding requirements. They've done it in incremental steps as opposed to addressing full year funding requirements. So, yeah, so just recognize that this is not normal by any sense of the imagination, and we're again going to have to deal with that at a national level, and certainly could have implications at a regional, statewide and regional level in terms of interruption of services. Could potentially be another shutdown if they can't prove funding. So again, we've gone through this twice now.
Down date that gets published or something.
Yeah. Yep. So stay tuned. What I'm doing is basically just giving you an idea, a sense as to what's out there on the horizon that we haven't addressed yet. So more to come there. I will, get some positive information at the end of November. Year over year inflation lowered to 3.5%. And that was actually a minor tick up from October, but it was due to a seasonal upswing in energy costs. So that was expected. So again, they felt that number was a win, and it was more indicative of kind of longer term trends in reducing inflation. This did provide stimulus to market expectations that the Fed has reached a terminal rate. And again, I use that term somewhat loosely because they do retain the ability, obviously, to adjust rates as needed. But there is a lot of sense in the market right now that there will not be any further rate hikes in the near term. And but again, they'll continue to monitor utilizing inflation as the primary gauge to determine whether or not any additional Fed action is required. But and with that, just
Bill,
a brief summary.
I just have for your brilliant analysis.
Sure.
If you're saying the inflation is at 3.5 and it was in that neighborhood all year, right? How did they come up with Social Security then at 3.2? Because we have a lot of retired people that live in Deschutes County, and their checks are next year only going to go up 3.2%.
I know, and it really is.
How did they pull that off?
How did they pull that off?
Yeah, that they did 3.2 for Social Security.
Yeah, it really is a measurement of a point in time that they use for that index. It isn't an average for the full year or anything like that. It's a year over year calculation. And when they get to that point where they make those adjustments, it really doesn't, in my mind, properly account for full year inflation, but just, kind of where it's at that particular point in time. So, yeah, challenging the way those annual increases are calculated. Yeah, I will briefly just give you an update on Fed meeting last Wednesday. And as expected, they decided to leave rates as is, holding rates steady. Basically, the official statement that came out of that meeting focused on slowing growth, signs of inflation abating, and really a softer bias towards additional rate hikes. In Chairman Powell's press conference afterwards, he mentioned public sentiment towards reaching a peak in the current rate cycle. The market, as a result of that, is currently estimating 50 basis points in rate reductions to take place during fiscal year 2024, and really kind of targeting a year-end rate right now. And this would be at year-end 2024, 4.625%. So again, 50 basis points in rate cuts expected right now. And again, that number can change. And a lot of that is kind of building, any how quickly they determine they actually need to start cutting rates. And there's some expectations right now that the first rate cut might take place as early as 2024, sometime in Q1 of 2024. Yeah. So, and again, this is a challenge because the Fed has so few tools to manage economic growth. And as we head into periods of deflation, which actually happens at the end of a rate tightening period, they're basically trying to pull off a soft landing and basically bringing inflation down to, again, the target of 2% has not changed. How quickly they feel they need to get there without kind of overstepping the corrective actions that they're taking. They also and again, there's a lot of debate right now about their policy of higher for longer in terms of do they keep rates at their current level higher for longer before they actually start to cut rates. And I think that's what we're going to probably have a little bit more clarity on in early 2024. Need a little bit more economic data. And really, we talked earlier about this continuing resolution that'll expire for temporary funding of our federal government, and what impact that might have if we can't resolve funding and keep our government funded and moving forward. I think that could also have an impact on what the Fed does with regards to rates. Again, I talked about consumer prices, kind of where they are right now. While not currently at the Fed's 2% target, the economy overall does continue to show signs of abating. Moving in the right direction. A couple of just statistics from November. Manufacturing perspective, producer price index rose by 0.2%, but that was following a 0.5% reduction in October. So a little bit of definitely trending in the right direction, but every month there seems to be a little bit of volatility, either upwards or downwards. But over the longer term, definitely showing signs of slowing there. The October jobs report reported nominal payroll growth of 199,000 jobs, which was up from 150,000 in October, but still in line with the economists' expectations. So we've seen a lot fewer jobs being created on a month-over-month basis over the last few months than we had prior to that. The overall unemployment rate edged down to 3.7% for November, which is still essentially described as full employment. So that's one of the challenges that we're faced with right now, is that the Fed does not feel that full employment is being impacted by rate discussions that are being held. So again, job growth is solid but declining over the peaks that we incurred back in midsummer.
But don't forget the job growth is in government.
Yeah,
that's the elephant in the room.
It's the type of employment growth that we're experiencing, and not necessarily in manufacturing and other areas where you get that rollover effect with the economy.
But I can announce that the American Hat Company at the national finals sold 850 cowboy hats in one day. 850.
That could be a new economic index.
Well, no, the money that was spent in Vegas for that, it was amazing.
Yeah. And
Heritage was there. Our Tumalo.
Of consumer spending has really been propping up this economy that, there's with increasing consumer debt levels and emergency 401k withdrawals, et cetera, that they're using to basically supplement income to continue to spend.
When I spoke to one of the folks that work at the Gilcrest mill, and they're talking about being on and off a few weeks at a time, like the mill being shut down temporarily. The log yard is full and the product at the warehouse is basically full. So they need customers to buy right now. And that's a housing market. It's not structural lumber. It's soft white pine door window trim stuff, but it's backed up.
Well, and
that was interesting to hear.
Way into talking about kind of where housing is right now. Nationally, housing data shows is starting to show more strength. November housing starts rose 14.8% nationwide, up to an annualized level of 1.56 million. So again, we're starting to see an increase in housing starts, but building permits dipped 2.5% in November. So and part of that is seasonal in nature, that building permits typically go down this time of year, but the housing start data actually caught the economists by surprise that it was so strong. And again, talking about the decline in the CPI has had a profound impact on long-term rates. The average 30-year mortgage rate declined from 7.3% in October to 6.95% at the end of November. This is the first time that the mortgage rate index has dipped below 7% since probably midsummer. So again, we're starting to see some positive effects there, which hopefully will impact housing activity in general. At a regional level, the November Beacon report, which I draw a lot of data from, shows Bend's area median sales price declined slightly to $730,000 for the month of November, and that was down from $735,000 or $40,000, I believe, in October. Median sales price is continuing to be impacted by higher end $1 million plus home sales, which in Deschutes County, particularly in Bend, we still have a large number of those home sales. Had 114 total sales in November, and 29 of those sales were above $1 million, which was 25% of total sales. And also of these 39 sales were cash transactions, which continues to dominate market activity right now. People buying homes without having to go out and get a mortgage to help fund that transaction. Currently a 2-month supply of homes listed with 31 days now listing for sold properties. So that's extending. That's doubled from what it was a month ago. So homes are being on the market for longer before they sell. And we still have a fairly 2-month supply of inventory across the board. Redmond statistics show a median sales price of $499,000, which is down from the prior month. And Redmond area permits were 21 for the month, which was also declined from the monthly high of 35, which was achieved in May. Most sales in the Redmond area were again in that $400,000 to $500,000 price point, which is still kind of affordable housing for our region. Looking to other markets in Deschutes County, Sisters area, the median sales price was $740,000 in that market. Sun River was over $1 million, $1,015,000 to be exact, and Lapine was $421,000 median sales price. So, any other questions with regards to kind of economic updates?
What did Redmond's go down? Do you know? You said it was 490.
It actually dipped prior month. I didn't bring that with me, but I believe it was like 515,000.
Okay.
So it dipped about 15 to 20,000 from the prior month end.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, without further ado, I'll go into my treasurer's report. The portfolio balance as of the end of November was $336.6 million, which was an increase of $33.7 million from October. And again, boosted by a significant influx of seasonal tax receipts. This was a decrease of $19.2 million year over year. And I think it's important to note year over year decline is primarily due to spending down ARPA funding over the last year, and then also utilizing bond funding that we realized a year ago to fund the Negus transfer station. So again, not two problematic. I think both of those were expected decline year over year in funds, and certainly had an impact on our portfolio balance at month end. I will mention that due to month-end timing, the portfolio balance was not impacted by the 20 million in bond proceeds, which we received in early December, and that'll be discussed next month. Net investment earnings were 957.8 thousand for the month, which was 429,000 more than last month and 474,000 higher than this time a year ago. And this was again reflected of a significant higher rate environment, more efficient funds management, the fact that we have that special account now with First Interstate Bank, what we call our Tier 3 account, which is paying the Fed or the LGIP rate. So we're not losing any efficiency, higher funds balances with the bank, and then also just an overall growth in the portfolio. All portfolio category balances are well within policy guidelines. The LGIP rate remains at 5%. It was last adjusted on October 16th. I do expect, as we have downward pressure on rates, that we may see a decline in the LGIP rate in the not too distant future. But again, that LGIP rate is really tied to more short-term investment yields, and that part of the yield curve hasn't declined significantly over the last month or so. But again, I am expecting to see some adjustment there. Average portfolio yield continues to climb and now stands at 3.34%. So we've seen some fairly significant increases there over the last few months, and certainly expect to see that that yield actually continue to go up. I've been doing a lot of investing over the last 30 to 45 days, and we're investing out to a lot of times 2 to 3 years. So we're trying to capture longer term rates today in anticipation of those longer term rates continuing to decline. And again, short portfolio duration right now is at 0.86 years, and that was up from 0.81 years a month ago. And again, that's also reflected by investing shorter term funds out longer term, and start to see that that weighted time maturity start to extend out. So, any questions with regards to where we are right now? That's it. Thank you very much.
So much.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Next item is finance report. So this is the November 2023 finance report.
Morning, Commissioners. Robert Tintel, Chief Financial Officer. And as a follow-up to the last discussion, I was able to Google Commissioner Dare, your question on the Social Security at 3.2%. The COLA is calculated based on inflation readings for July, August, and September. In those months, the rates were 2.6%, 3.4%, and 3.5% respectively. So the average of those 3 months is 3.2%. So we know. I didn't know that prior either, but Google's always our friend.
Okay, it's always nice to know, isn't it? Like, where do they get these numbers? And how do they get 2.6? Because I go to the market and things are $1 more. You know, a $5 item is now $6. So I don't get that 2.6.
All right, so we're here to discuss the, November 2023 unaudited financials, and you have that packet in front of you. So on page 190 is where we'll start with a general fund recap. Just looking at the dashboard, revenues for the general fund, there were $38.9 million, or 87.5% of the budget. By comparison, at this time last year, it was 36 million, or 82.3% of budget. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the general fund page in the packet. Expenses were 18.2 million at this time in November, and that was the same amount they were last year, 18.2 million. But the percent of budget was 39.5% this year, as opposed to 40.1% last year, and that's because as our budget increases, it's a lower percent, even though the amount's the same. Beginning fund balance is 14 million, or 101.1% of the budget, at 13.8 million beginning fund balance. If you're looking at that dashboard, one of the items I'd like to highlight is the monthly revenues. It's the bottom graph. You can see, obviously, in November, it would be month 5. And again, it's kind of small, but the green is last year and the blue is this year. So we did, as we'll talk about, receive more dollars this year than at this time last year, but it's all similar. Next, page 191 in your packet is the FTE increases. There were 3 FTE increases within the month of November, and those were for health services. So we went from 1,245, about 246, up to 1,249, essentially, in FTE, and our percent unfilled is about 11.34%. Year to date, though, fiscal year to date, it's at 10.87, but still around that 11%. Just want to highlight a couple of departments that still have some major vacancies. Sheriff's Office, you'll see at 42.25%. Health Services at 34.6%. 911, we talk about that a lot. It's still at the 5.43% positions. I'm saying percent.
42%.
Yeah.
We knew what you meant.
Thank you. Yeah, after I heard myself. Okay, so I'm going to go to page 196, which is the general fund actuals, Fund 001. The first line there under resources, you'll see property taxes current. And our original budget that we had was 37.4 million. At this point in November, we've collected 35,173,000 at 94% of our budget. On average, at this time in November, we've collected 92% of our budget on taxes. So we are a little bit ahead of where we typically are. And so that's why I think when we looked at that graph earlier, you saw we collected more than last year. Of course, the amount is higher, but it's also the percentage we've collected has also been higher. Is higher. On the variance line there, again, just want to point out again, on the far right, note A, 735,987. That's the increase that we are expecting because of the difference in what we budgeted at 4.9% for the assessed value increase, and the actual came in at 5.59%. So that's the additional general fund that we're expecting for this year. The middle columns, expenditures, total requirements, we're at 39% of the year in our expenditures. This time through November, it is 41.7% of the fiscal year. So we are on target within our expenditures. And again, even though our revenue is jumping back up to total resources, we are at 88%. And again, that's expected because, as you know, most of our revenues come in through November through the tax receipts for the general fund. Our actuals, in the middle column, gray shaded column, total fund balance ends currently at 34.7 million is where we're at today. But as I just stated, all the revenues come in November. So we know most of the revenues we have received. And so our expenditures will keep growing. But what we anticipate by the end of the year in the projection, we will end at 13.7 million for fund balance, and which is we're expecting 1.5 million over what our budget was at this time.
Robert, I noticed the clerk is at the revenue is actually at 38%. Are things still being impacted there because of refinancing, et cetera?
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers, but that is what we are still expecting. And until rates continue to
go down,
that's when we expect the activity would increase, but we may be waiting for that. Page 197, Juvenile Fund 030. At this point, their total resources are only at 12% of the fiscal year. That's because the OYA basic and diversion payments, those come in quarterly. We haven't booked the actual quarterly payment for that. Those revenues will be coming in. You can see in their projections in the last column for the revenue for those top two, their major revenues, they are expecting to be actually over budget based on the allocations for the 23-25 biennium. So it's just a timing issue with those revenues. We're expecting those to come in. Next page, 198 in your packet, TRT fund 160-170. Top line for resources, room taxes. We've collected 7.7 million to date. We are expecting at this point 12.4 million by the end of the year, or at this point, again, about 180,000 less than what we were originally budgeted for that. Room tax revenue is down right now 2.2% from fiscal year 23. Last month, we were down, this is year to date, we were down 1.5%. So our deficit is increasing at this point for that. November alone was down 10.1% for the month, the activity. So that was a huge, again, and it's a month delayed again when we collect them. So that was the largest decrease thus far. We'll see how it is for the current month once we go forward. But so our year to date, again, is down over 2% from what we were originally expecting. And we'll see how that progresses. And that's where we'll look at our long-term projection for the year, as well as we start experiencing these current months, we'll look at our projections and see where we end up as well. Our ending fund balance in the middle there in the actuals column is, to date right now, is 4.4 million. Last month at this time, our fund balance was 4.7 million. So it did decrease by another $300,000 just in this 1 month. Again, because less revenue that we've had come in. Under the projection, the total fund balance, the fund is balanced with the $2 million. And again, we balance that because that is the last payment to Sun River Service District for our commitment there for the their public safety building. Any questions on TRT at this point? Next.
I have a question about skiing. Do they make snow at Hoodoo?
No,
No, they don't, do they?
not cold enough.
Okay, well, I think it's supposed to get colder this weekend, isn't it? I'm just like, oh my gosh. Yeah, because we were number 5 in North America for ski resorts this year per the Wall Street Journal. I'm hoping that we're going to get some more snow, right?
We do need that.
Yes.
Water too.
Okay, page 199, ARPA Fund 200. Just want to point out there on the total fund balance column between budget, actuals, and where we end up in the revenues. This fund really, it's just cleaned up from last month. The board approved a lot of the budget adjusting journals and approvals for moving beginning working capital. Again, this fund, the revenues are always projected to equal the expenditure, so we don't anticipate fund balances by the end of the year, but we also know in reality for any unspent funds, we will carry that revenue over to the next year for anything not expended. Page 201 in your packet, Sheriff's Office Fund 255. Top 2 lines for the resources here, the law enforcement district number 1 countywide and number 2 for rural. Their property taxes, again, just like county general fund, they receive most of their taxes in at this time of year. And for them, they're at 93%. And by the end of the year, they're expecting they will have more revenue than they originally budgeted at $145,000 for countywide and about $80,000 for the rural, higher than budgeted. These numbers, their projections and their budget to actual, they haven't been cleaned up or matched. The journal for this fund posted on the 13th, and these reports were prepared on the 12th. So when we come back and see these in November, you will see a cleaned up portion of this fund. And also the Sheriff's Office has been working actively with the budget office, and they're looking at their expenditures for this year as well as preparing for next year on any adjustments for the adjustment to the beginning working capital that we made through the budget last month, excuse me. 204 in your packet, Health Services Behavioral Fund, Fund 274. I do want to follow up on a question from last month. There's a line under resources for divorce filing fees and why there is no budget and no actuals. I'm not sure if everyone received the note from the budget office on that, because there was a question last month is why is it zero now when we have had actuals in the prior years? And the reason for that is the county receives these funds from the Oregon Judicial Department. In the past, the IGA was with Health Services Department, and they would receive a portion of those funds. However, and it's related to the parental custody mediation on behalf of Deschutes County Circuit Court. However, the new IGA and with the OJD specified they desire to use a contractor to provide these services, and therefore Health Services no longer receives those funds as they do not provide those services anymore. So the funds now pass through Deschutes County and go directly to the circuit court. So that's why we don't see any activity in those funds, which makes sense. Community Development Fund 295, page 206 in your packet. Their projection for ending fiscal year 2024, the gray shaded column on the right is at $1 million. That's their minimum target level, and that's where they're projecting at still at this time. They have utilized 321,000 of their fund balance to operate through November. So fiscal year to date, that's how much of their reserves they have used. In November, they did collect significant revenue related to a building permit for an apartment complex in La Pine. And so a transfer was not needed actually in this month for them to maintain that $1 million target where they're at. So that did help their activity level there. And of course, Sherry Pinner and the team there are actively monitoring the finances on there. And of course, we get the report monthly from them. Page 208, Adult P&P Fund 355. Their revenues are on target. Really just wanted to highlight on this fund. Their net total fund balance increase of about $736,000 they're expecting by the end of the year. That the variance from the budget, really it's due to vacancy savings in that. Otherwise, their revenues they're projecting to be on target where they're at, and just some savings in the expenditures. That's why they'll see a savings in the projected ending fund balance there. If the funds that seem to be on target, on status quo, I'm just moving past, but if you have any questions specifically on some of these, be sure to ask as well. So I'm going to go all the way to page 218 in your packet, which is Risk Management Fund 670. Just for an update on this fund. The ending fund balance actually hasn't changed much from last month, even though we have received more revenues in, we've had more expenditures, but the ending fund balance ends at 8.832 million. Currently, last month it was 8.828. So again, not a lot of change. So with revenues and expenditures through that fund, they appear to be pretty stable thus far. Next page, Health Benefits Fund 675. The total resources, the total revenues thus far, and again, most of the revenues come from the internal charges from departments. As of November, it's 11.8 million. Last month, it was 9.4 million. So we are seeing the revenues come in like we're expecting them to. And again, most of them because we just charge out departments. On the expenditure side, we did see an increase there. We're at 32% of the total requirements. As of November, it's 10.4 million. Last month, it was 7.2. So it went up over 3 million in expenditures. And here, the total fund balance, we're now at 7.5 million in the actuals column. Last month, we were 8.3 million. So it did see a 741,000 decrease in the fund balance in this 1 month. However, the projection is still the same at 4.3 million. We'll end up at the 4.2 at the end of the year. pending any new activity that we see. If we start seeing higher claims or costs come in for the next 3 months, then those will be adjusted as well. So, but overall, revenues are still higher than the expenses. However, we also know that claims take, up to 30 days or so to come in late to get charged back. But as you know, that's the fund, the budget, and human resources, follow, and we're monitoring that fund as well. And then 911, their revenues are on target. Same thing, their property tax revenues come within this month. And so that's why you see a big jump in their increase in their revenue as well, their resources. And that's the quick overview that I have.
Robert, going back to risk management, I did have one question. So we were just talking recently about how having healthy reserves, having healthy fund balance carryovers, contingency, all of that is very helpful for external entities to evaluate our financial strength and our financial position. Is risk management part of that consideration as well? Or I mean, does risk management is that viewed just like any other department, the balance and, for the department and the reserves, or is risk management also considered like a kind of a unique measure of fiscal health and resiliency?
I'll answer that with our operating funds do have a reserve level according to our policy, and then other special internal service funds have a different reserve level, and those are mostly looked at individually or what's appropriate for that fund. Also, in answering the question is really when they're looking at when Moody's or other outside agencies are looking at ours, they look a lot at the general fund, your special revenue funds, and your business type funds, solid waste, and other proprietary funds. So they are looking holistically at it. This fund would be part of that because it is cash on hand. So overall, but this would be more minor, although important, because if this fund doesn't have a reserve, the general fund would need to pick it up, right? All funds, if they don't have enough revenues or resources or reserves, in essence, essentially, the general fund is one of the only funds that could help support the business of that fund because other funds are restricted. So it does come into play, but holistically, they look at the reserves at a lot of the other major funds.
And Eric is here if there are follow-up questions as our risk manager.
Oh, there you go.
Eric, I was just asking how risk management is viewed in terms of evaluations of the county's overall financial health and resiliency.
Sure. Each year we have an actuarial study done that provides us guidelines on how much should be in that fund. As part of that actuarial study, we provide the firm a running list of our claims, both on the workers' comp side and general liability. And based on the claims and the reserves we have attached to those claims, that helps drive how much we should have in the fund. So we do that on an annual basis.
But if somebody's our bond rating or something like that, there's not a like a special question or column or row that says, well, like, how is your risk management fund doing? It's more, the risk management is more for us.
That's why I haven't seen the exact line carved out specifically by fund.
Yeah, it's treated much different than an operating fund. And I'll give an example of a hypothetical claim and how that's treated. Say the county purchased an airplane for county business, and I got my pilot license, and I was flying the plane on county business, and I made a mistake and crashed it into a building. And it caused $10 million worth of damage. We would reserve that as a potential claim, and on our in risk management, we would reserve that we may need to spend $10 million to pay that claim out. So through the actuarial study, it would take into account that potential payout, and based on us valuing that claim at a potential $10 million payout, they would say you need to significantly increase your risk management fund. So we do that. You know, we have lots of different types of claims. The most costly claims are on the general liability and workers' comp side.
Thank you.
I guess to follow up on that, to clarify also, if we did know when we went out for a bond, if we did know there was a fund at risk, especially in that example that had a major exposure to the general fund, we would highlight it in that case, but they wouldn't ask specifically about the risk fund.
And the risk management fund is part of the ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Review.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're getting to the end of the published agenda. We do have executive session and other items today, but board selection of chair and vice chair for 2024. Yeah. Thoughts?
Oh. Well, thank you for serving this year.
Honored to be serving.
Yes, it's been interesting, and actually I appreciate it's, you never know how long anything is going to take when you're doing your agenda timing. And sometimes, like today, we expected maybe not to really actually to have more public input. I honestly was expecting a lot more than just Ryan. So I understand when you're doing the timeline, it's an imperfect science.
So one topic I'm interested in possibly having a discussion about the coordinated homeless office. I don't know if there's any interest in changing positions there. And I haven't brought this up before, but it just kind of came to mind that, we might discuss, having a different role there too, possibly.
Okay.
What does that have to do with selection of a board chair and vice chair for next year?
It just came to me thinking that I would like to step in and do that. So kind of speaking to my fellow commissioners, if I'm not chair, I would like to do that this next year. Just an idea.
We typically do committee assignments in January, correct? Note that for January.
Yes, we typically do them in January.
So I would support Commissioner Dare chair in the next year, and going with that.
Yeah, well, I would just like to emphasize that for decades, the Board of Commissioners had a precedent and tradition of rotating the chair role among the three commissioners. And in the last 3 years, we have abandoned that. And I think it's important for everybody to just be real explicit about that. In past years, the blame has actually been placed on me, saying that I was unfit to serve in the chair role. I think it's really important for everyone to just understand that the real explanation is that now we have moved to a principle of the ideological majority of the board selecting among themselves who's going to be the chair in the next year. And if that's the way we're going to do it, then let's just be real clear and honest about it.
Do you accept that nomination, Commissioner Dare?
I do.
Thank you very much. So I'll make that an official motion. So I'll nominate Commissioner Dare as the chair of the Deschutes County Commission for 2024.
So I need to second it.
I guess so, yeah, to put it in the minutes on a vote, yeah.
I second it.
Okay, so any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
No.
And chair will vote yes. Okay, thank you very much for that. And with that, other items. I know we have a presentation next year or, I don't-
We have a vice chair.
Vice Chair.
oh, I'm sorry. Chair and vice chair. Well, Commissioner Chang, I'd be honored if you'd serve as the vice chair.
Vice chair is a meaningless title. I'm not interested in serving as vice chair.
Okay. I'll nominate Commissioner DeBonne then.
And I'll second it. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
No.
and Chair will vote yes. So I'll finish this meeting and then the next time we meet will be a meeting led by Commissioner Dare. Okay, thank you very much. Vice and Chair and Vice Chair for next year. This time, other items. Yeah, if
Commissioner,
you're
do you
ready,
want to,
yeah.
do you want to begin?
Yeah,
with
so
the
as I said, that was
presentation?
just the
And then
next
we
piece of paper I
have,
had.
a couple of other topics as well, but we can begin with the presentation if you prefer.
So yeah, this is going to be a leadership band presentation next, what's the date? Yeah, Whitney's available in here. So it's just kind of the standard starting point of a presentation we've done in the past. Hot topics could evolve, legislative priorities will evolve.
Thank you, Commissioner DeBonne. Yes, the board is scheduled to give its annual leadership band presentation on Tuesday, January 16th. And so staff has modified the presentation the board delivered last year, updating it for this year. And I know that I just placed hard copies in your boxes yesterday, so everyone might not have had a chance to see that. I was planning to come back and connect with the board in early January, probably at a meeting just before your presentation to just really kind of hone in on that draft and get your feedback, but happy to take comments and feedback from the board as well today if there's any direction that you'd like to provide for this year's presentation.
Well, and I'd say just January 16th is the date and it's going to come fast. So that's all we need to acknowledge with today. There's a structure of a presentation and yeah, we can schedule up when we come back on it. And if there's any changes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other.
Two more items. So let's, since Jen Patterson is here, let's start with Jen. We have two questions. One regarding to the how frequently and when the board would like to meet regarding the legislative schedule, so we can coordinate that with Doug Riggs and our team here in short order. And then the second question is an email we just received this morning from the Association of Oregon Counties regarding a voting member that Commissioner Chang has been serving on with AOC. They would just like, they want to finalize their roster because their first meeting is January 8th. So they're asking if we can complete that. So Jen, hope I didn't take all the words out of your mouth, but I'll turn it over to you as you're now with us.
For the record, Jen Patterson, Strategic Initiatives Manager. So per the first question, a few staff met with Doug Riggs last Friday, and we're looking to start scheduling our regular legislative updates to review bills. The session, as you know, doesn't start till February. However, there's some working days for the legislature, January 10th through the 12th. Doug believes that there probably be some real bills on the table for review and potentially suggesting starting those weekly meetings if you want to do weekly meetings as of January 19th, if we want to stick to the previous schedule of doing it on Friday mornings. So just wanted to check in if Friday mornings still work and if doing those on a weekly basis is beneficial for you, and if January 19th is a great start date for you.
So I support having just kind of a work session or business meeting, kind of legislative update, work session on a Monday afternoon for the, the body of topics that are coming around, the analysis by departments and priority setting. So, let's do that during our regular schedules or even have a special meeting, but, just afternoon kind of stuff is my thought. And then, I support Fridays. It'll be real tight. We'll have 2 or 3 meetings and then all of a sudden it'll be halfway through the session and then it'll be on the downhill slide.
All right, just for clarification, the Monday work sessions, you want that during the Monday board meetings, or you would like a separate work session?
Oh, either way, maybe one of them is going to be a bigger one. So we'll schedule it for, if it's too big for a Monday afternoon.
So just one work session, bring in Doug, bring in the department heads. Okay.
And then if we do updates, we can do it on those Friday mornings.
And then for that timing, for that Monday work session, perhaps on January 19th is the Friday, the legislative works days are the 10th through the 12th. So potentially if schedules allow the January 15th for a work session ahead of.
Because then they'll have bill numbers and everything. Is that the idea?
He's hoping that week that they'll have bill numbers put together and
Yeah,
by the 19th be able to have bills to review.
15th and the 19th. That's fine. We'll meet twice that week.
Okay, our first January 15th.
No, the
Stand up, please.
15th is Martin Luther King
Okay.
Day, and it's the Fair Associates dinner that night. And it will be the last time that it is on Martin Luther King Day because they have upgraded their bylaws. But this will be the last time. So that's on the 15th. So we won't have a
Yeah.
Monday meeting. Well,
Yeah.
I know that. That's like, I go like,
No,
have we not
yeah.
gotten off Martin Luther King Day? So anyway, yes.
So we could even either begin the first legislative meeting on Friday, the 19th, or on Monday, the 22nd. Is that correct?
I think we should go before that because this is short session and we cannot be caught behind. We need to like look at,
12th?
Mm-hmm.
yes. Yeah, Friday the 12th.
To have the big work session and then start regular legislative review, bill reviews on the 19th.
I would think so.
That work for all commissioners? Okay. I'll look at schedules and put that on the calendar.
Throughout January, I have Friday meetings starting at like 10. So if we're going to do this on Friday morning, I'd request first thing in the morning.
Yeah, I
No,
believe
we
last year we did right at 8 a.m. and we
We
could
did.
stick to that schedule if that works for everyone.
We used to meet at 7 a.m. Do you all remember?
Before my
Seven,
time.
I know. We were here, we were in upstairs at 7 a.m. Have things changed?
Yeah, well, and as I say, let's get the proposed dates going, and then if there's a, proposed change to what gets put in place, we can just have that discussion too.
Okay, so I'm tracking January 12th, a work session with department heads, bring in Doug, then regularly scheduled bill review meetings starting the 19th, 8 a.m. with a virtual attendance. Is that great?
Mhm.
Excellent.
Perfect. And then the second topic, as Nick mentioned, as AOC, you reached out today. We currently do not have a voting seat on the legislative committee, but we have the option to have a voting seat on the legislative committee. And we would also need to know which representative is in that seat. Previously in 2023, they noted that Commissioner Chang served as a representative for Deschutes County. And the first meeting for that will take place on Monday, January 8th.
And that can be done remotely now too, is for AOC.
Yes.
Okay.
I can be. So
So the two questions are, do the commissioners want to have a seat on that committee?
we do. It's critical. We need to have a seat on that committee.
Great.
Definitely. Commissioner DeBonne, do you want to do that this time?
Any thoughts? I mean, yeah, we were in
Work
the-
session, it's only going to be a couple
Yeah,
weeks.
about 2 or 3 meetings. And then, say I was in the room sometimes when you were at the table voting, and it worked out fine, some of the topics. The probability of finding that one super hot, high priority topic of Deschutes County, and it's good to be at the table voting on things for the state of Oregon, but is low, but there'll be possibly a moment, so.
There were plenty of items reviewed by the AOC Legislative Committee that had major significance for all Oregon counties, including
Yeah.
Deschutes County.
I agree. Well, are you interested in being engaged in that, or, I mean, I will do it also, or?
I served last year. I'm good with that.
Doing it again or offering to that I could be at the table? 'Cause I mean, I'd like to.
I'm happy not to do it again.
Okay, yeah, so I'll accept that position for AOC legislative meetings.
Great, I will let them know. And that was it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, the other item just we said that we would revisit this week is the Oregon Judicial Department's Amendment 1 regarding the courthouse and the language. Commissioner, we had two commissioners last week that supported proceeding with the amendment as revised by county legal. Commissioner Adair was not at that meeting, but Commissioner Adair has been very involved in a lot of discussions and activities regarding the third floor. And so we just, we wanted to bring it back for Commissioner Adair to provide comments and see if the board wants to continue with that or make a change in course of action. Dave, we have Lee Randall, our facilities directors here. If you have any questions for them, but otherwise we turn it back over to the board for that discussion. And again, as you're aware, the amendment really requires the county to make the third floor available for the court purposes. And it was really the timeline of which that would happen. It was 3 months. County legal suggested 9 months, but we haven't submitted anything to them because we wanted to make sure that the board remains.
Is there any way this group can give me the grace till January 3rd? I've gotten contact information from Governor Kotek and actually from Governor Kate Brown too. And then I have actually talked to a lot of legislators about this. So, but this is the holiday season, and I'm hoping that through this, by January 2nd, I'll have a yay or a nay.
If I may just defer to either Lee and or Dave or Whitney,
I mean, do we have to have it signed by year end? Did they give us a deadline?
A yea or a nay on what?
The amendment number 2, does it have to be signed by the county before this year is over? Or
There's no mandate that it be signed this year. The funding is triggered upon the agreement being signed by the parties. So that's really the only trigger event. They indicated the funding will be provided within, I believe, 14 days of the amendment being signed.
Is that blackmail?
Pardon?
I said, is that blackmail?
Well, no,
Yeah.
no, I mean, it's their bargaining. It's how
It was general funds.
they're doing that, but I can't speak to the construction piece of it and all that. I suppose Lee is here. I don't know if that's something, I would assume another week or two is probably not going to impact that too much.
Well, and so last week when we were having this discussion, I knew that, let's make sure Commissioner Dare is up to speed on this and let's not do it the one meeting she wasn't at. So that's how we got here.
Thank you very much.
It's a, who's the other party specifically?
The Oregon Judicial Department.
Judicial Department, putting in words saying within a certain amount of time, the rooms will be available to convert to state court needs, which is the intention I think that we're doing here. But yeah, the dynamics of these words from the Oregon Judicial Department was pretty aggressive. I would agree. So,
Well, the really wonderful news, the win-win of the situation is that now I know how much the Ninth Circuit Court actually just want to come here. So, I've got to make, I always try and look at things, the bright side of everything. I know they want to come here. I know what they're asking for. And if I can't finesse this, then maybe I can finesse something else. Chief had another excellent conversation with Chief Justice Hernandez. He will no longer be the Chief Justice next year, which he reminds me of, but he's been incredibly helpful. And, and I did briefly talk to Lee yesterday, and of course we were going to talk maybe later, but, have to turn this into a win-win. And talking to Counselor Broadman this week, the fact that bringing the federal court system, it's 20 years overdue, to quote U.S. Attorney General Billy Williams. So the bankruptcy courts are all federal. That means that all those people that are filing bankruptcy have to drive over the mountain, which further costs more money for people that are really struggling. So Counselor Broadman was definitely supportive of it. So hopefully, if this doesn't work, something else will work, and we won't have to wait 10 or 20 years for a federal court system to come here. But I would appreciate the grace of at least till January 3rd.
Yeah, I think from a construction standpoint, that doesn't present a challenge in terms of the funds being dispersed. It would be great if Robert Kentel could weigh in as CFO as well, but we don't expect a significant expenditure of funds in January. So if we're able to finalize the amendment in January, I think that would be sufficient for the project needs.
well, as I say, Commissioner, the intention is future courthouse rooms, and you're looking for that interim opportunity, which is it's a big step, thinking that the feds are going to be able to utilize that. My understanding is they probably want even a bigger footprint. So this would be a minimal resource for that kind of an effort. But yeah, I mean, if we can wait a few weeks, I don't see a downside to that.
2 weeks.
I don't see a problem from a facility.
It is interesting, isn't it? Everybody wants us now, So you have to look at the positive and think, okay, people recognize the growth of Central Oregon and the fact that we could serve the eastern side of the mountains. I think that's really,
Oh, look at that. Robert Tintel shows up.
here he is. Yes. Here are my favorite CFO.
Commissioners, if the question is still on board, waiting the additional time for the agreement is fine. Our goal is to use the bond proceeds first, and then we would use the state funds.
Thank you. I hope you didn't run down here.
So the only others, yeah, we're in a higher interest rate environment. So if, if you end up money in the bank, then, and we heard of this in Sun River yesterday, they're going to end up just a function of the money and how fast they can spend it. They're going to end up with $600,000 to be able to buy furniture and finishes for their project. So that's the only downside to.
That was what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Robert. So as soon as those $15 million are transferred to the county, we can earn interest on them.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
2 weeks is
well
significant.
Sounds like.
When you look at our interest income this year, what doubled last year's to date? So it is significant.
Okay.
2 weeks.
Okay, well, yeah, and I support that, but let's acknowledge that this is, coming to a point where can't wait much longer.
See, when were we allocated that? Last April? No, it was what, June? Yeah. All right.
Okay. So there's a proposal and we're just in standby a little bit right now.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Other.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioner?
Nothing other than we need to get that, the Fair Association on the calendar for Martin Luther King Day. It's a Monday.
And I put it on my personal schedule. Anything else, Commissioner Chang?
Nope.
Okay, well, 2023, we're going to have an executive session, but this is our official end of the meeting series. So yeah, it's been an honor to serve citizens of Deschutes County this year. 2023 coming to a close for our board meetings of the Board of Commissioners. Let's all have a great holiday and enjoy your time with family and friends. Thank you very much.